I'm joined now by someone who worked on Doctor Who fairly early on in terms of her career, but has since gone on to do a lot of comedy, particularly shows such as Thin Blue Line and Gimme Gimme Gimme. So I'd like to introduce design assistant Sandra Garfield. How are you?
I'm fine. And can you call me Sandy, please? I know that you found me somewhere online in the ether under Sandra Garfield, and nobody ever calls me that. Only people I went to school with. So it's Sandy, for sure.
I suppose that's the joys of the BBC, always very formal and particular.
It's right, yes. I don't know why, though, because I was always known as Sandy there. I've got some drawings here, and I was definitely Sandy Garfield, yes. I'll show you. I can prove that to you in a minute. Yeah.
So I suppose the best place to start is, what does a design assistant do? What does that job involve?
Okay, so design assistant is a term that doesn't really exist anymore, but it did exist in the BBC in the heady days of the late 70s. So I joined the BBC when I was only 21 in 1978. Do the maths. And everybody that joined really to learn about TV and TV design in the design department, and we were all called design assistants, not even assistant designer, which would have been a level up. Thank you very much, BBC. No, design assistant. And we were all moved into, it was terribly exciting that first day at the BBC. Oh my God, I thought I'd died and gone to heaven. Can you imagine? I'd done a degree in architecture 3 years at Nottingham, and I was absolutely bloody useless, quite frankly. I mean, I was very good at technical drawing, as you will see, but I was never going to be an architect. And the BBC at that time were advertised, I think, every summer, which a friend of mine told me about. And every summer they used to advertise for, are you ready for this? This is even funnier. Holiday relief assistants. We won't go there. Anyway, I don't know why they just were busier in the summer, and everybody was taken on contract. And then if you were good enough, you got a permanent job. So we were all desperate for a permanent job. So we were allocated into groups, and each group had maybe about 8 or 10 designers and design assistants. And the head of the group was the, God, what are they called? Head of design group? No. Anyway, the head of the group. And he was also a designer. So I was allocated to a group that was run by Ray Cusick. And Ray Cusick, you Doctor Who groupies may remember or know or not know, designed the Dalek way back in 50-something, 60s, can't remember. Anyway, he used to dine out on that story. So I was in his group, and we got to work on all sorts of programs. So a design assistant will always work with a designer. So design assistants are number 2 to the designer. So how it worked was 2 of us allocated to a show, I mean, all sorts, anything. And one of the shows that I got on, and I think after just 6 months, was Doctor Who. It's terribly exciting. And the designer I worked with was a lovely chap called Richard McMahon Smith. Are you out there, Richard? I'd love to find you. And how it worked, so it was his concept, and we'd read the script together. He would probably do sketches of each set required, and then the Doctor Who that I worked on was all studio-based, so we didn't go out filming anywhere, as I remember it, although Alex remembers more than I do. He's looked it all up. So we were all in the studio. It was all in the studio, and he would probably design a sketch of each set, probably a very good sketch or elementary dimensions. And it was my job to draw the setup so that the BBC construction guys could make it. And in those heady days at BBC TV Centre, we were on one floor, and then on the ground floor was a huge construction warehouse, I guess, construction floor where all the painters and chippies, and they put it all together. So my job, and exhibit 1, everybody, was to turn my designer, Richard's drawings and sketches into beautiful, beautiful technical drawings. Very big, it's A1. So kind of difficult to show you, but I think you can probably see down there It says BBC Television Design Department and the name of the director and Richard's name and my name. And this drawing would then, we'd take it down to the construction guys on the floor and they would make the set. So also at the BBC, it was a little world all to itself, and there was a department, actually a little room, called Scenery Bookings. You couldn't make it up, really. And in Scenery Bookings, there were 3 people working there, and the BBC had a stock of scenery. So doors, windows, columns, rather wonderful things called niches, which are kind of little alcoves. And we put together the set. It was a bit like Lego, really. Using, I mean, if it was appropriate, you know, doors, windows. I'm having a look at this. I don't think this one's got any stock. No, I don't think it has. Oh, yes, a couple of columns. And we used to put it together, and it was such fun. It was just the most enormous fun. And to this day, I love doing drawings like this. We were taught to draw in a certain way with the plan. Always had to be the bottom left-hand corner of the sheet of paper. And then we used to do extended elevations. So it was like making a model. And in fact, we did make models out of the drawings. And that was a lovely thing to do. So get the drawing copied, spray mount it onto card, cut it out. It was all terribly high tech, everybody. Lots of glue involved and scissors. And so models were really useful to show the director and the production team what the set was going to look like. And then it was my job then to draw the studio plan. So there were 8 studios at the BBC. And the biggest one was TC1, Television Centre 1, which is still going, I think. They've turned it into they've turned it into Flats Television Centre, which really upsets me, in Wood Lane, but they've still retained 3 studios, I believe. I haven't been there. And then I had a design assistant also with the designer, but I had to draw up the plan of the studio to show how all the sets would fit around it. And then we went into the studio and shot it.
Because this would have been a time that you'd have 1 studio per show, but in that every set had to fit in it, because it was sometimes done sort of as live, I suppose.
Yes, not the dramas, not Doctor Who. I mean, we probably would have had, I've got to really think back now, we probably had the studio maybe booked out for 3 days for 1 episode. So the first day, the lighting crew would come in and all the lights would drop from the ceiling and they'd fix the lights according to my studio plan, and then the lights would go up, and then our guys would build all the sets in the afternoon and the evening. But there was also a mysterious man who painted the floors. So, for example, this drawing that I flashed past you was actually the Louvre in Paris. And so there were floor rollers which came in various patterns, like parquet flooring. And so overnight, the floor roller man would get out with the floor roller for parquet floorings and paint the floor of the studio to look like parquet flooring of the Louvre. And then we would put our set on top of it. And then we probably have 2 days to record that, struggling to remember really, but I think so. And it went on, you know, we did record. When I say record, I mean, it's very piecemeal and it takes forever. We have 1 scene in 1 set and they rehearse it and block it, it's called, so that all the camera positions find themselves where they need to be. And then we do eventually press record. And off they went. And then there'll be a whole other, you know, okay, cut, stop, and everybody shifts about, goes for a cup of tea, comes back, moves on to the next set. I've got a funny story about one of the actors in my Doctor Who. So I don't remember much about my Doctor Who episode, other than it was set in Paris, which is why we've got a set here of the Louvre. I've got another drawing here of the cellar. So I don't know why we were in a cellar. Here's the cellar drawing there. Doctor Who and his lovely assistant were probably locked up in the cellar. So my Doctor Who was Tom Baker, who I remember as utterly charming and completely bonkers. And his assistant was the lovely Lala Ward. I think her real name, everybody, but who knows? L-A-L-A. Lala. Who had also married him. And they were married for a short period of time. Don't know. Look it up on Wiki. And the only thing I remember about this episode was there was the most charming, gorgeous actor in it called Julian Glover. So anybody about my age, 63, watching this, or a bit younger in your 50s, may remember the very charming, very handsome Julian Glover. I think he's still working. Anyway, he was in this episode. And I do remember lurking at the back of one of the sets during recording. There's a lot of lurking that goes on in TV production in the studio. I mean, everybody lurks endlessly because it takes so long. So you've got all the lights and all the action and directors directing from the big gallery upstairs and all the monitors all over the studio, but the lights are only on in one set at a time, so there might be 4 or 5 other sets around the studio, all in darkness because they're not on that at the moment. So I do remember lurking behind one of the other sets, waiting for it to come into its own and making sure everything looks all right. And Julian Glover was also lurking, because the actors lurk as well. I mean, it's endless waiting around. And I do remember him coming up to me very slowly and smiling. So I smiled, famous person approaching. And he leaned over. I think I was leaning on a counter of some sort. And he leant over this counter and he said quite seriously, "Did anybody ever tell you you're a very attractive woman?" Woo! I'm not sure I said anything. I probably went bright red and you couldn't tell in the dark. And then he sloped off, probably to charm one of the makeup girls or something. I've never forgotten it. Julian Glover, my favourite actor.
So it's certainly a memorable, I suppose, actor more than story then, and a nice job to do.
Oh, lovely job to do. I was only 22. I mean, my God, who could... I mean, I used to watch Doctor Who when I was little, but behind the sofa, behind the cushions, terrified of William Hartnell. Anybody remember him? That's how old I am. And being absolutely terrified. I don't even remember this episode having any aliens or monsters in it. But Alex, thank you, has sent me a photo of what he actually promises me is Julian Glover wearing the most ridiculous green monster mask. I think Julian Glover was the one and only alien. No wonder I can't remember it. No dialects, nothing like that. No, anyway. Yes.
How was Richard McMahon-Smith to work with? Was he someone that you sort of knew of at the BBC?
Well, he was in my group. So in all the groups, no, leave that in, that's hilarious. In all the groups, so Ray Cusick was the group leader, head of group. God, I can't remember what they're called. And so Richard was one of the probably 4 or 5 designers. He'd been there for quite a few years. A lovely man, very, very talented. We had a lot of fun doing this, I remember. And then there probably were 5 assistants for each designer.
So with something like the Louvre, I take it you wouldn't have actually gone to Paris. You would have had to rely on both Richard's drawings and whatever material the BBC had in-house.
Pre-internet, boys and girls, ladies and gentlemen, internet had never been thought of, but we did have the BBC Library. Hurrah for the BBC Library. And there were lots and lots of reference books there, photographs, black and white photographs of all sorts of things and famous buildings. So I would, as a design assistant, that was such a nice job, would be tasked to go up there and speak to a very nice lady, very nice BBC librarian, very serious probably, and say, you got anything on the Louvre then? I need the Louvre. And I would sift through books and find images and photos of the Louvre. So we would have copied this corner of the Louvre from the real thing and just turned it into BBC speak. we also used to, I mean, they still do, we still do in film and TV design, lots of PVC vac form, which means that if you want to, maybe in the cellar, my cellar, we probably had a bit of brick and stone, but it would have been just all sort of plastic PVC vac formed brick and stone that we'd get them fixed to the wall and then paint it. It's all done by mirrors, folks.
Yes, none of it is real, sadly. But was Doctor Who a particularly complicated job to do, or was it this story perhaps fairly straightforward?
I think the story must have been straightforward because look, I've got a set here of the Louvre building and a cellar. So we probably would have found some images of cellars, but I haven't got spaceship drawings. I haven't got, so the TARDIS was always the TARDIS, so the stock TARDIS that probably was stored somewhere downstairs in the BBC, you know. So I think I would have remembered if it had been sort of futuristic, but I think this one was very much based on reality. Therefore a bit boring really for Doctor Who, but I didn't care. I met Julian Glover.
Would you have been involved in things like set dressing as well? Because Julian Glover's sort of chateau was very lavish. It was full of antiques. Would that have been more the props department?
I don't even remember that. Oh my gosh. No, that all comes under the umbrella of design, the set design. So as part of the team, designer Richard, design assistant me, age 22, very green and new and excited. And there was also always a member of the team called the props buyer, which does sound very mediocre, doesn't it? Props buyer. It sort of sounds like they go out there and buy a few jugs and things and a tablecloth and all is done. But actually, they're very, very talented people as well. That role still exists more in TV, really. But their role is more concentrated on the props and the dressing. But we all have a say in it, the designer especially, who would either go out with the props buyer to choose all the small props, so all the hand props or anything they'd be using. I mean, for example, if his apartment was very gorgeous, they would as a pair go out and decide what they were going to choose, or I would go as well, or instead of the designer. And all around London, there are prop houses where you can hire props, and they're still there. Some have gone, but the big ones are still there. So there are some that specialise in antiques. So, for example, Farley's Prop House. Oh my goodness, Alex, you should go and do an interview in Farley's. It's amazing. They have real antiques there and also reproduction of all periods. And you just walk around these huge warehouses with rows and rows and rows of Victorian chairs, cabinets, Georgian pieces, beautiful china, and there are so many prop houses. There's prop houses specialise in scientific equipment, there are prop and doctor type stuff where the whole of Casualty is probably done. There are prop houses specialise in children's stuff and toys and going back over the years. It's a whole other world, and we don't take it for granted. But now thinking about it, you got very used to it. But the first time I walked into a prop house, I couldn't believe my eyes. I mean, it's like going into a museum and saying, I'll have one of those, two of those, or quite like that. That old rug would be nice. But it's quite, prop buyer is really, it's a terrible term for a very talented person who's a set dresser, really. And in films, they are called set dressers, set decorators. Anyway.
As you progressed through the BBC, who would have been the people you particularly learned from them?
Oh, always the designers, always, 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 because they really knew after years of experience how making a TV program actually works, and lots of it is very technical, which I was never very good at, all to do with camera angles and things like that. It was very interesting. They just learn so much from the recording as well. And talking to the director, we'd have meetings with the director who'd say, oh, well, I'd like to frame the shot like that. Sorry, there's lots of that goes on. And how it's all pieced together. And it's very, very, very complicated. And I don't know if anybody's ever been in a TV studio, but it is actually mind-blowing, because there's the action that takes place on the studio floor with all the cameras, great big lumbering things in my days. And the director and his team sit upstairs in the gallery, and in the gallery there are three main parts of the gallery: the director's gallery, the lighting gallery, where we used to sit whilst they were recording, because you can look at all the monitors. The lighting designer sat there with all the technical guys around him, and there's banks and banks of machines and consoles, and then there's sound gallery and sound department. And you just think, how is this all put together with all the lights on the studio floor and all the cameras with all their cables? It's amazing.
And your latter work was perhaps more in comedy, things like Thin Blue Line, Gimme Gimme Gimme. Was that a deliberate move into comedy, or did it just sort of happen?
You are so good. I bet you've looked all that, the Thin Blue Line. I remember that, Gimme Gimme. It just happened, really. I left the BBC after about, gosh, I can't remember actually, 6 years. I mean, I was, learned a lot. It was a very bureaucratic place, and I was a bit of a rebel, naughty girl. And I went freelance, which lots of us did, some earlier than others. I think I did leave a bit early. It's hard to get, and I left because I'd met somebody who said, oh, I'm freelance designer, I'm doing this job, would you consider coming to do it with me, leaving the Beeb? I said, oh, that's very grown up. Yes, okay. Very cavalier. And that was Jane Coleman, and she was designing a comedy series, Who Dares Wins, with Jimmy Mulville, Rory McGrath, Tony Robinson, and that was shot in Limehouse Studios. Anybody remember Limehouse Studios? It's now Docklands, no longer exists. So I started with her. I did a couple of series of that, and then you just have to find your own work, really, and it's hard and quite stressful. Anyway, but I sort of got into this comedy slot with the designers who were doing lots of comedy. So James Dillon, I worked with. He works a lot, James, but he did lots of comedy. So he did Thin Blue Line with, what's his name? James Dreyfus, actor. Dreyfus? Yeah, he's hilarious. And he went on to do Gimme Gimme Gimme, and I assisted James on Gimme Gimme. And you sort of get to work with designers, and if they ask you back, you've done an okay job. They don't always ask you back. So, but I did always prefer TV, to work in TV series, comedy, because lots of it is studio based, and that's good for it's good for a life work balance, because you don't have to leave home basically. When you go filming, and I have been filming, it used to be fun filming at the BBC in the old days, because we used to stop at 11 o'clock for 11 o'clock coffee and have biscuits and things, and then you'd stop for lunch. It was all about the food. Everybody filming, it's about the food, and army marches on its stomach. And we used to stop for afternoon tea and sandwiches and cakes. It was marvellous. And I don't remember hugely long days. They must have been quite often out of London, so we'd all be put up in various hotels. And can I just say, sex and drugs and rock and roll, it was fantastic. However, that was heady days with BBC, and then over the years it changed, and at filming, it's brutal really. Now I hear it from friends. I mean, you have to get up at 5 in the morning in order to get to location for 6. Alex will know, because he has locations. So Alex, locations, you're first in, aren't you, and last out?
Yes, very much so.
It's a killer. Anyway, but quite often get up at 5, pitch black outside, drive, oh my God, something to drive 40 minutes, an hour and a half, get to set, get your bacon butty, you know you're on when you got your bacon butty, and start, oh, I don't know, start shooting at 7:30 or something, and going on to 7 at night, 12-hour days, and no 11s, no coffee, no biscuits, no lunch. Good, who's getting lunch? But generally, absolutely exhausting. Actually, I just couldn't do it now. I don't know how people do it. And used to do, this is sort of going on a few years, 6-day weeks, or what does it used to be called? 13-day fortnights or something?
11-day fortnights, yeah.
Sorry, 11-day fortnights. That's brutal. 6 days followed by a 5-day. You think, oh my God, give me a day off. It's also very tiring. I'm telling lots of stories against myself now. But when I was occasionally filming, what's it called? It's called standby art director. It's the most difficult job in the whole crew because, filming is so bloody hard anyway. And you have to keep awake and alert for 12 hours. And filming takes forever. And you've got up at 5 o'clock, honestly, by 11 in the morning. I can keep my eyes open. And on one shoot, I think it was that thing with John Nettles, what's it called? Midsummer Murders I was working on. I was absolutely knackered. And I've been doing these 11-day fortnights and getting up at 5 in the morning. I couldn't keep awake. I just could not keep awake. And unbeknown to me, the prop guys went around the whole of the crew and they thought it was hilarious. The days of Polaroids. And they took Polaroids of all the members of the crew who had fallen asleep during the day. And there were many, many, many members of the crew who had fallen asleep during the day. And guess who won? Me. There's endless photos of Sandy Garfield asleep on set. Yeah, not good, not good. So I always preferred comedy series when it's nice and contained in the studio and, you can go home at night. Quite like that. Yeah, that's not really an artistic decision, is it, actually? It's more of a lifestyle decision.
But one series that I remember you did, Little Britain, which at the time seemed to be everywhere. How was that to work on?
Oh, I think I did a couple of those. I think they were more established by the time I got to work on one with my big mate, Dennis de Groot. So I was called an art director by then, by the way. Forget this design assistant thing, art director. No, that's proper, isn't it? Anyway, I can't remember, it was not so long ago, 12 years ago maybe. Anyway, so the episode that we worked on was an episode where we went to Majorca. Yay! Got some foreign filming in. And Dennis didn't go, actually. I had to go. We were a bit short-staffed. And it is a lot of fun, but it's still really hard work. I mean, the hours are pretty brutal, but hey, we were filming in Majorca. And I do remember we were doing, and it was quite hot, and we were on a beach. I know it sounds lovely, everybody, but really, it's still stressful, okay? And it was a scene with Matt and David. And I think he was in the sea, David? I know he was a great one for swimming. I mean, I can't remember. But anyway, we're on the beach, and I think I had to make a sign out of fake stones. They were asking for help. They were marooned on a beach or something. And there were all of us there, director, camera, film cameraman, brute lighting and costume and everybody. And suddenly we looked up on the hills and there was this flash. It looked like something had caught the light. Well, something had caught the light of the sun, and it was a paparazzi. And that was quite something, because we get so used to doing this stuff, but to the rest of the world and to papers, I mean, these are big stars, they're big news, Little Britain, and we were hounded by paparazzi, the paps, everywhere we went. And I remember that they were prepared for it, the crew. And one of the lighting guys had a mirror, a big sheet of mirror. So every time we got papped from a hill or a mountain or behind the trees, he'd get out his own mirror and catch the light and flash them back. Oh my God. That's what that was like. There's everybody. And I think word just gets out, oh my God, they're filming Little Britain in Majorca. They probably flew out, especially, I don't know. Get a life, I would say. It was okay. It was quite fun. I mean, it was, I think it was 10 days or something. But it's still hard work. I mean, you don't fall about laughing all day long, do you, Alex?
Sadly not, although it's nice to be abroad, certainly.
Yes, it was nice. Yeah. And I've watched them go from strength to strength. Really, absolutely amazing. I got a David Walliams story. I might get shot down for it. No, I'm not telling the David Walliams story.
Was there any sort of one particular series or job that stood out for you that perhaps you learned the most from?
Do you know what? Not really. It would have been at the BBC, because it was only at the BBC that I had that huge variety of shows to work on. The very first show I worked on, age 21, can you believe it, was the Onedin Line. Anybody my age remember the Onedin Line? I couldn't believe it, that, I mean, I used to watch it, and there I was at the BBC and TV Centre. And, God, what period was it? It's Victorian, wasn't it? Was it? Jesus, I can't even remember. How embarrassing. Yes, it was. And so, of course, I'm working with a designer. I can't remember who it was. I can't remember that. It'll come to me. So I had to do lots of research into the period. And then, of course, we're recreating a period of English history. And we've done the research. So I learned a lot about it, and how big were the skirtings and what kind of moulding shall we use, and then the set dressing, going around the props department, actually getting age-appropriate props. Oh, and the other thing at the BBC, so I just remember, I haven't thought about this for years, so it's actually great to remember it. The BBC TV studios, Wood Lane, used to smell of hairspray. Why is that, you may ask? Because we used to use, I think it was Elnet hairspray. And there was a store there where we used to get it from. We got all sorts of things, double-sided tape and spray glue and all sorts of things, including hairspray. So big cans, light brown, dark brown, light grey, dark grey, and black, I remember, were the 5. And why they were so good, especially on a period show, was they're very good for aging things. Aging props, aging anything really, just a light dusting, and it's already looking a bit antique. Not that, it wouldn't be antique in the Victorian times, but just to, the cellar, my Doctor Who cellar, I probably spent ages spraying corners down to age things. Don't think it'd be used now, it's probably carcinogenic. Who knows? So I think it was amazing. The BBC training was absolutely phenomenal, really. How to design a set and what materials to use, and the PVC and the fake brick, and talking to scenic artists. We had scenic artists at the BBC department. They had their own studio where all the scenic art cloths were hung. That's an art, actually, to design a backcloth. So if you're in a house looking out on a garden, what angle to design the look of the garden, or to get a perspective into the house opposite or something. It's very clever stuff. Learned a lot. I think after leaving the Beeb, I did work on one period film. Nearly killed me. I won't even talk about it. But mostly contemporary sitcom, and also a lot of light entertainment. I've only got 15 minutes, Alex. I'm wittering on. I've also worked with my dear friend. I did quite a lot of light entertainment as well after leaving the Beeb, and I got to work. I know brilliant designer called Andy Walmsley. And Andy designed Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, amongst many other things. Now, I didn't work on Millionaire, but the most extraordinary guy. He was very young then. He's still very young compared to me. He's actually now working in America. He went out to LA and then Vegas and New York, and he designs the most extraordinary sets. It was actually a privilege to work with Andy, and his office was in Richmond, and I did a lot of work with him and did huge drawings like this on A1 on a big drawing board on amazing light entertainment sets, which are a whole different thing from drama and comedy. They used to use a lot of neon, and yeah, we used a company called Neon Circus. Lots of neon, lots of chrome, lots of shiny black floors. Learnt a lot from him as well. It's a whole different discipline.
Is something like that perhaps a little bit more fun, because you're not trying to recreate something, you've got to have a sort of game show look to it?
Yeah. Yeah, and I always think on those kind of shows, I'm so glad that I wasn't the designer. I could never have been a light entertainment designer, because if you think about it, there kind of aren't any rules. I used to say to him, I don't know how you come up with these ideas. I mean, you've got to start off with here's a game show. How many thousands of game shows are you? You've got to do something different. I mean, it takes a certain kind of brain to do that. Not all designers can be like light entertainment designers. And the lighting these days, when you watch X Factor and Britain's Got Talent, the lighting is extraordinary, both on the sets and around. It's a whole different discipline. It's quite something. And it's also quite fun because it's static, and you're in the studio and it's nice and warm, everybody. You don't have to stop because there's a plane going over or stuff like that.
On the note of the joys of being in studio, I'd just like to say thank you very much for your time, Sandy. It's been lovely to talk to you about just some of your work, which you clearly enjoyed every minute of it.
It's a pleasure. I could wrap it on for weeks, but you'll all fall asleep. Thank you. It's been great fun reminiscing. I've thought about stuff I haven't thought about for years.
Oh, well, okay. I'm glad to have started that off.
Pleasure. Let's do it again. Okay.